Hello, guys, and welcome back to War and Peace. We're going to continue on Volume 2, Part 5, Chapter 2. At the beginning of winter, Prince Nikolai Andrich Bukovsky came to Moscow with his daughter. Because of his past, because of his intelligence and originality, and especially because of the weakening just then of the raptures over the reign of Alexander I, and because of the anti-French and patriotic tendencies which reigned at that time in Moscow, Prince Nikolai Andrich at once became an object of special deference among the Muscovites and the center of Moscow opposition to the government. The prince had aged very much that year. Distinct signs of senility appeared in him. Falling asleep unexpectedly, a forgetfulness of recent events, and a good memory of those long past, and the childish vanity with which he accepted the role of the head of the Moscow opposition, despite which, when the old man, especially in the evenings, came out to tea in his fur-trimmed jacket and powdered wig, and prompted by someone, began his curt stories of the past, or his still more curt and cunning opinions of the present, he aroused in all his guests the same feeling of deferential respect. For his visitors, the whole of that whole house, with its enormous pier glasses, its pre-revolutionary furniture, those powdered footmen, and the tough and intelligent old man, himself of the previous century, with his meek daughter and the pretty little Frenchwoman, who both stood in awe of him, presented a majestically agreeable spectacle. But the visitors did not consider that. Besides those 2 or 3 hours during which they saw their hosts, there were another 22 hours in the day during which the secret inner life of the house went on. Lately in Moscow, that inner life had become very painful of Princess Maria. She was deprived in Moscow of her best joys, conversations with the people of God and solitude which refreshed her in Bald Hills. Nor did she have any of the advantages or joys of life in the capital. She did not go into society. Everyone knew that her father would not let her go without him, and he could not go on account of ill health, and so she was never invited to dinners or soirees. Princess Marya had completely abandoned all hope of getting married. She saw the coldness and animosity with which Prince Nikolai Andrich received and sent away the young men, possible suitors, who occasionally appeared in their house. Princess Marya had no friends. During this time in Moscow, she had become disappointed in the two persons closest to her. Mil Borin, with whom she could not be fully candid ever before, now became disagreeable to her, and she, for certain reasons, began to withdraw from her. Julie, who lived in Moscow, and with whom Princess Marya had corresponded for the last 5 years, turned out to be totally foreign to her when Princess Marya met her again in person. At that time, Julie, who, owing to the deaths of her brothers, had become one of the richest prospective brides in Moscow, was in the full world of society pleasures. She was surrounded by young men who, she thought, had suddenly come to appreciate her merits. Julie had reached that stage when a young lady of society feels that her last chance to marry has come to her fate must be decided now or never. On Thursday, Princess Marya remembered with a sad smile that she now had no one to write to, since Julie, whose presence brought her no joy, was there, and she saw her every week. Like the old immigrant who refused to marry a lady with whom he had been spending his evenings for several years, because, once married, he would not know where to spend his evenings. She was sorry that Julie was there and that she had no one to write to. Princess Marya had no one in Moscow with whom she could talk to, no one to whom she could confide her grief, and many new griefs had been added on during that time. The date of Prince Andrew returned, and marriage was approaching, and his request that she prepare their father for it had not only been fulfilled, but the matter, on the contrary, seemed to have deteriorated completely, and any reminder of the Countess Rostov put the old prince beside himself, and he was almost always in a bad mood as it was. A new grief recently added to Princess Maria's burden was the lessons she gave to her 6-year-old nephew. In her relations with Nikoloshka, she recognized in herself with horror the quality of her father's irritability. No matter how many times she told herself that she must not allow herself to get angry while reaching and teaching her nephew, almost every time she sat down with a pointer over the French reader. She wanted so much to pour her knowledge quickly and easily from herself into the child, who was already afraid that his aunt was about to get angry, that at the least inattention of the boy's part, she jumped, hurried, became angry, raised her voice, sometimes pulled his arm, and made him stand in the corner. Having stood him in the corner, she herself would begin to weep over her wicked, bad character, and Nikolushka, imitating her, weeping, would leave the corner without permission, come over to her, pull her wet hands away from her face, and comfort her. But the greatest of all the princess' griefs, came from her father's irritability, which was always directed against her and lately had reached the point of cruelty. He had made her bow to the ground all night. If he had beaten her, made her carry firewood and water, it would not even have occurred to her that her position was difficult. But this loving tormentor, the more cruel because he loved her and because of that tormented himself and her, knew not only how to insult and humiliate her deliberately, but also how to prove to her that she was always to blame for everything. Lately, a new feature had appeared in him, and which tormented Princess Marya most of all. This was an increasing intimacy with Millie Borin. The thought which had occurred to him as a joke when he received news of his son's intention, that if Andrei got married, he himself would marry Borin, but evidently to his liking, and lately only in order to insult her, as it seemed to Princess Marya, he had stubbornly shown a special affection for Millie Borin, and had shown his displeasure with his daughter by showing his liking for Borin. One day in Moscow, in Princess Marya's presence, it seemed to her that he did it in front of her on purpose. The old princess kissed Millie Borin's hand, pulled her to him, and embraced her affectionately. Prince Marya flared up and ran out of the room. A few moments later, Millie Borin came into Princess Marya's room, smiling and talking about something cheerfully in her pleasant voice. Princess Marya hastily wiped her tears, went up to Borin with resolute steps, and apparently not realizing it herself, began shouting at the Frenchwoman with wrathful haste and a breaking voice. "It's vile, low, inhuman to take advantage of the weakness." She did not finish. "Get out of my room," she cried, and burst into sobs. The next day, the prince did not say a word to his daughter, but she noticed that over dinner he ordered the food served, starting with Millie Borin. At the end of the dinner, when the butler, out of old habit, again served the coffee, starting with the princess, the prince suddenly flew into a rage, flung his cane at Flip, and at once gave orders for him to be sent as a soldier. "They don't hear." "I told them twice." "They don't hear. She's the first person in this house. She's my best friend," cried the prince. "And," he shouted wrathfully, addressing Prince Marya for the first time, "if you allow yourself once more, as you did yesterday, to forget yourself before her, I'll show you who's master in this house. Out! I don't want to see you. Apologize to her." Princess Marya apologized to Amelia Evgeneva and to her father for herself and for the butler Flip, who had asked to intercede for him. At such moments, a feeling resembling the pride of sacrifice gathered in Princess Marya's soul, and suddenly at those same moments in her presence, this father whom she had judged would either search for her spectacles, fumbling just next to them and not seeing them, or forget what had happened, or make a false step with his weakening legs and look around to see if anyone had noticed his weakness, or which was worse of all, over dinner, if there were no guest to excite him, would suddenly doze off, dropping his napkin and hanging his shaking head over his plate. He's old and weak. I dare to judge him, she would think with self-loathing at such moments. And I'm going to keep it short this time. I'm going to leave it off here. Thank you guys so much if you're still watching the series. I've been putting some new lights and videos and changing my audio equipment. But anyway, I hope you guys are enjoying it. Please give it a thumbs up, leave some comments below, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.